Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lynn. Namaskar. Coming up in the next hour. India's External Affairs Minister Jaishankar meets the US NSA Sullivan and says the relationship to advance strongly under Modi 3.0 government. Sullivan also calls on Prime Minister Modi, US-India Strategic Partnership Forum to meet in Washington later in the day. India makes stand clear on Russia-Ukraine peace, says a resolution requires sincere engagement on part of both sides and all stakeholders. Russian President Putin to visit North Korea. His first visit in 24 years underscores Moscow's growing ties with the isolated nuclear DPRK. Eid-ul-Adha celebrated with religious fervor across India and various parts of the world. President and Prime Minister greet the nation on the occasion. And Bangladesh cements the final Super 8 spot in the ICC Men's T20 World Cup, beating Nepal by 21 runs. All teams in the Super 8 are confirmed. The matches to begin from June 19. India's Ministry of External Affairs has clarified that India did not associate itself with any communique or document emerging from the Ukraine Peace Summit in Switzerland. India said that a resolution requires a sincere and practical engagement between the two parties to the conflict, and it is willing to contribute to all earnest efforts to bring about an early and abiding peace. More in this report. The Ministry of External Affairs in a press release has clarified India's stand at the just concluded summit on peace in Ukraine hosted by Switzerland. The Indian delegation, led by Pawan Kapoor, Secretary West, Ministry of External Affairs, attended the opening and closing plenary sessions of the summit hosted by Switzerland in Burgenstock on the 15th and 16th of June 2024. India did not associate itself with any communique or document emerging from this summit. India's participation in the summit, as well as in the preceding NSA political director level meetings based on Ukraine's peace formula, was in line with our consistent approach to facilitate a lasting and peaceful resolution to the conflict through dialogue and diplomacy. We continue to believe that such a resolution requires a sincere and practical engagement between the two parties to the conflict. In this regard, India will continue to remain engaged with all stakeholders as well as both the parties to contribute to all earnest efforts to bring about an early and abiding peace. It is clear that at every opportunity India has sought dialogue and diplomacy as a resolution to the conflict in Ukraine. It was Prime Minister Modi who first told Russian President Putin that this is not the era of war on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Uzbekistan in 2022. Since then, India's stand has been consistent and something that both sides have respected. On December 7, 2023, Russian President Putin said that he respected PM Modi because he cannot be intimidated or forced to make decisions that are contrary to Indian interests. Prime Minister Modi met Ukrainian President Zelensky at the G7 summit in Italy on the 14th of June, just a day before the Switzerland Peace Summit. The PM conveyed that India continues to encourage peaceful resolution of the conflict through dialogue and diplomacy, and reiterated that India would continue to do everything within its means to support a peaceful solution. Prime Minister Modi had also met the Ukrainian President Zelensky at the 2023 G7 summit in Hiroshima in Japan. At the time, India was president of the G20. It is clear from Foreign Secretary Quatra's press interaction at the time that India's stand has remained unchanged.
In meeting with President Zelensky, Prime Minister of India conveyed India's clear support for dialogue and diplomacy to find a way forward. Prime Minister also said that India will continue to extend humanitarian assistance to the people of Ukraine.
India will remain actively involved with all stakeholders and parties, earnestly contributing towards efforts for achieving lasting peace at the earliest opportunity. Bureau Report, DD India. The Kremlin said on Monday that a Swiss conference on the Ukraine crisis had negligible results and showed the futility of holding talks without Russia. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that the results of the meeting were close to zero. He further added that Russia remains open to dialogue with all countries that intend to conduct it. And it is also said that the conference provided Ukraine with a chance to showcase the support from Western allies. And DD India's Dasha Chernyshova gives us more from Moscow.
Well, interestingly, Moscow says it is still open for the negotiations, but it says again that the conditions that President Vladimir Putin has most recently outlined are still there, and Ukraine has to take them. That is, to withdraw troops from the 4 regions that Russia now claims as its own. Then immediately Moscow will be ready to cease fire and get to the negotiating table. So any conference where the participation of Russia does seem to require this issue. Having said that, we've heard the Kremlin on Sunday also saying that Ukraine should understand that every time that Moscow makes a peace offer, or at least an initiative to bring this conflict back to the political and diplomatic track of solution, the conditions for Ukraine on the ground are getting worse and worse. Until now, Moscow has been saying that any talks should take into account the realities on the ground, but now Moscow wants the Ukrainian troops out from the entire territories of those 4 regions, which Russia doesn't have full control of and is still fighting for. So the understanding here in Moscow is very clear that the world majority and the countries that took part in this peace conference in Switzerland, they also took the note of Russia's absence and the meaninglessness of any discussions on the Ukrainian settlement without Moscow participation.
Russian President Vladimir Putin will visit North Korea from June 18 to June 19 at the invitation of the leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un. This was reported by the North Korean state television, KRT, on Monday. This marks Putin's first visit to Pyongyang since July of 2000. The visit comes amid Russia's efforts to strengthen ties with North Korea amid strained relations with the West due to the Ukraine war. According to the Kremlin, after North Korea, Putin is also going to visit Vietnam from June 19 to June 20. A broad range of bilateral, regional and global issues were discussed as the Indian External Affairs Minister held talks with the U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan in New Delhi on Monday. Dr. Jaishankar said that he was confident that the India-US strategic partnership will continue to advance strongly under the Modi 3.0 government. This is the first trip to India by a senior American official after the NDA government, led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, returned to power. Earlier, the US NSA met his Indian counterpart Ajit Doval. The duo reviewed progress on the India-US initiative on critical and emerging technologies. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi also met the U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan in New Delhi. Sullivan called on the Prime Minister and held discussions on the Indo-US Comprehensive Global Strategic Partnership. After the meeting, the Prime Minister wrote on the social media platform X that India is committed to furthering their strategic partnership with the United States for global good. And also, on the other hand, in fact, the first high-level India-US, or in fact US-India dialogue post the India parliamentary election, the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum, it's going to hold its 7th annual Leadership Summit in Washington on Monday evening. This annual Leadership Summit is the most prestigious US-India gathering in Washington, D.C., bringing together a distinguished cohort of eminent individuals and key stakeholders from both countries. The summit will focus on critical and emerging technology initiatives and honoring Henry R. Kravis for his contributions in strengthening the bond between the United States and India. And my colleague Amrit Pal Singh has been following these stories and he joins us now. Amrit, what message from President Biden did Sullivan convey to Prime Minister Modi?
NSA Sullivan, Mark, carried the message of President Biden that that the U.S. is committed to taking the comprehensive global partnership to the next level, and that's why you saw this meeting, which is the initiative on critical and emerging technologies. When he met the Prime Minister, he conveyed President Biden's commitment, and the Prime Minister, on his part, expressed satisfaction at the speed and scale of the growing bilateral partnership and the convergence on all areas, especially on regional and global issues. He recalled his interaction with President Biden a few days ago at the G7 summit, and he also expressed his commitment to take the relationship to greater heights in his new term. Mark?
Also, Amrit, now what did the meeting of NSA Sullivan with EAM Jaishankar focus on?
Well, first, of course, the U.S. NSA conveyed to the External Affairs Minister that how the two sides are committed to partnering in critical and emerging technologies such as semiconductors, artificial intelligence, telecom, defense, critical minerals, space, among other areas. And Dr. Jaishankar also on his part told the U.S. National Security Envoy advisor that India on its part would do everything and looks forward to collaborating with the U.S. at the bilateral level, but also at regional forums to the trilateral dialogue between U.S., India, and Korea. Also, the cooperation with Australia in minerals. So the two sides basically discussed that where the relationship stands today, and reiterated the commitment to carry on the relationship at the scale and speed it's going. Mark.
Okay, final question, Amrit. Put into context also the meetings of the two NSAs, Sullivan and Doval.
The two NSAs met and with their delegations. In fact, it was a huge delegation that the U.S. side, the U.S. NSA was leading. And they spoke about how they reviewed where the relationship in critical and emerging technologies is going, and talked about how the two sides have made strides towards expanding the strategic partnership in semiconductors, advanced telecommunications, quantum, biotechnology, even clean energy. And they committed once again that their technology will be used for and developed and deployed in a manner that's consistent with the democratic values, and seeing to it that it's not leaked to any other countries. They reiterated the commitment to focusing on efforts for joint co-production, co-development, research and development, and leveraging innovation for enhancing coordination to other like-minded nations to deliver a secure, reliable, cost-competitive technology solution, which is not just in the interest of the Indian and the American people, but the world at large. Mark.
Okay, we leave it there. Thank you very much, Amritpal Singh, for joining us with those updates. Now, still to come here on DD India News Hour. The Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu dissolves his war cabinet. UK opinion polls not very flattering to Sunak's Conservative Party. And northern states in India deal with excessive heat, while the eastern states face excessive rainfall.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Amid the ongoing West Asia crisis, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has announced the dissolution of his six-member war cabinet. This follows his criticism of military strategies that proposed daily tactical pauses in fighting. Despite this, humanitarian aid trucks passed through the Kerem Shalom crossing in the southern part of Israel on Monday. Meanwhile, the U.S. Special Envoy Amos Hochstein is also in Israel for crucial talks.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has taken a significant step in the midst of escalating tensions by announcing the dissolution of the six-member war cabinet. This decision comes on the heels of Netanyahu's criticism of military strategies unveiled just a day earlier.
The Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, said he's dissolved this very limited war cabinet, and this is, of course, on the back of the departure of the war cabinet member Benny Gantz just last week, and also that observer Gadi Eisenkot. Now, there is a lot of concern that this void may now be filled by the far-right elements of the government, specifically Itamar Ben-Gvir, the National Security Minister, who's really been pushing for a seat on this very, very small cabinet. But Netanyahu has just come out to say that he will now continue to consult with a limited forum for very sensitive decisions.
Netanyahu voiced his disapproval of military plans announced on Sunday, which proposed implementing tactical pauses in the ongoing conflict in Gaza. Despite these disagreements, Monday saw trucks laden with humanitarian aid passing through the Kerem Shalom crossing in southern Israel.
Israel has continuously improved our capacity for performing security inspection of humanitarian aid, and there is no obstacle in the way of making its way to where it needs to get to on that front. The challenge remains with distribution. We have the ability, and indeed are, inspecting more humanitarian aid than the UN can distribute.
Meanwhile, U.S. Special Envoy Amos Hochstein is currently in Israel for critical discussions aimed at diffusing tensions along the Blue Line, the sensitive border dividing Israel and Lebanon. He is slated to meet President Isaac Herzog, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and the war leadership of Israel. While in a moving display of public concern and pressure on the government, Israeli high school students took to the streets on Monday. They demanded a swift and decisive resolution to secure the release of all hostages currently held in Gaza.
Our youth is on it, involved in this, and it is of importance for the young as well as for the adults, the families and the seniors. This is what we want to pass on to the families of hostages, to send them strength, to empower them by saying that we want all hostages back home as soon as possible.
The developments mark a complex and volatile situation in the region, with diplomatic efforts and domestic pressures deepening amidst the ongoing crisis.
And DD India's Sarah Coates now joins us from Tel Aviv with more on the story. Sarah, what confirmation has come from Netanyahu's office regarding the dissolution of the war cabinet?
Hello there, Mark. Well, this did come out a little earlier today. He reportedly told a cabinet meeting late last night that the war cabinet is done, and this is really being seen as a move to block these far right-wing elements from joining this very limited war cabinet, as they've been asking to do, specifically the National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir and also the Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich. Now, this would be very concerning for Israel if indeed they did, in fact, somehow fill this void, given that they would really affect Israel's international standing. These two ministers, they're very pro-settlement. They've been very vocal in their lobbying to resettle Gaza and also, of course, push forward plans for illegal settlements in the West Bank. And this, of course, is something that the United States has come out very vocally saying that it is against. Now, Netanyahu, since all of this came to light a little earlier today, he said that he'll now consult with a limited forum for sensitive decisions. So widely expected, very symbolic, but really the main message here is that these far right-wing elements cannot permeate this very small decision-making cabinet because it would have, of course, very serious consequences for Israel's international standing.
And what are the consequences like for Netanyahu? Are troubles mounting for him?
Certainly, their troubles have been brewing now for months. He's widely seen as having a lack of a plan in Gaza, also a lack of a plan for the day after. But it's not just the war cabinet and it's not just these far-right ministers that he's relying on, that he's having problems with. It is here on the ground in Israel. There is a week of disruption underway. There are thousands of people taking to the streets. They are blocking main highways. They are burning tyres. And they are calling for Benjamin Netanyahu to step down and for elections to be held before October 7, saying that the nation can only heal once this happens. So really, pressure from these elements of his government, pressure here on the ground, not to mention pressure from the Americans. And this is why this US envoy, Amos Hochstein, is here in the region. He's just held very high-level talks with Netanyahu and some of his senior advisors in Jerusalem over the situation in Israel's north with Hezbollah. Certainly very, very concerning to the Biden administration. And this is something that President Biden wants to get under control, if possible, through diplomatic means as soon as possible, amid real fears that this conflict with Hezbollah could potentially spiral into a regional war. And on that, we do have confirmation from the Israeli military, also from Hezbollah, that over the past few hours, airstrikes have killed a senior Hezbollah operative. That's Mohammed Ayoub. He is part of the Nasser unit, and that is the unit that the Israeli military says is responsible for this latest real uptick of rocket and drone fire into Israel.
We leave it there. Thank you very much. Sarah Coates from Tel Aviv. Now, U.S. Special Forces and South Korean forces, they've conducted a combined live fire exercise on Monday at a shooting range in South Korea's Taebaek city. During this drill, an AC-130J Ghost Rider aircraft, it was seen targeting and hitting targets on a mountain. The South Korean and U.S. militaries have boosted training exercises in response to North Korea's weapons testing, including ballistic missile launches and tactical weapons firing. Allied forces have showcased strength in the disputed South China Sea, and the US, Canada, Japan and the Philippines have conducted a two-day joint maritime exercise. Now, this maritime cooperative activity involved a series of maritime maneuvers to test and validate the interoperability of the armed forces' doctrine, tactics, techniques and procedures. Earlier in April, the Philippines conducted joint maritime activity with Japan, Australia and the United States. The Philippines has turned to countries supportive of its claims in the South China Sea to counter what it regards as increasing aggressiveness of China. The Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese raised concerns over human rights in China, the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the Pacific in a meeting with the Chinese Premier Li Qiang in Canberra. The case of China-born Australian writer Yang Hengjun, who was handed, in fact, a suspended death sentence by a Beijing court, was also raised during this meeting. The visit by Li, it marks a thaw in the ties between the two countries after tensions erupted over Beijing blocking $20 billion in Australian exports and friction over defence encounters.
Well, I did raise the issue of ensuring that foreign interference wasn't acceptable in Australia's political system. We've seen, of course, here as a full expression of our democracy, different views being out the front of Parliament House. We saw this morning an expression of that. I have had constructive discussions with Premier Li, and those discussions have produced results. We're not transactional in how we deal with that. We put forward our view, and I must say that the Premier also puts forward his view.
The European Union leaders are gathering for the first informal meeting in Brussels on Monday since the European Parliament election. Leaders will debate policy goals for the next 5 years, from defence to the economy. Firstly, the leaders are to discuss who should be the next presidents of the European Commission and the European Council and the Foreign Policy Chief. Germany's Ursula von der Leyen is in a prime position to secure a second term as the head of the EU executive, while the former Portugal Prime Minister Alberto Costa is set to become the next president of the European Council. The leaders are due to confirm their choices at an EU summit on June 27 to 28. Now, the EU leaders are also expected to discuss the next 5-year legislative cycle and to stress on common values, defense, as well as economic competitiveness. They are due to confirm their strategic agenda, their guidance at the end of June summit. In a grim picture for the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's beleaguered party, 3 British opinion polls released late on Saturday have predicted a wipeout for the Conservatives or the Tories. And one pollster warned of an electoral extinction in the elections scheduled for July 4. Sunak's leadership has been racked by difficulties, and also his sudden decision to announce the elections was met with mixed reactions and an exodus of Conservative MPs. In one of the polls by the Sunday Times, it has predicted that the Conservatives could end up with just 72 seats in the 650-member House of Commons. That's their lowest in nearly 200 years, and the Labour would get about 456 seats. The French election campaign started on Monday for snap polls called by President Macron to combat the far right. Macron unexpectedly called this election following a trouncing of the ruling party by Marine Le Pen's national rally in the European Parliament elections. Le Pen's Eurosceptic national rally is leading in opinion polls, while France's left-wing parties, they formed a new alliance to fight the election. Let's get you some weather updates now. And northern states in India, they are grappling with heat waves, and the eastern states are facing heavy rainfalls and as well as landslides. Similar extreme weather patterns are observed in different parts of the world. This report puts it into context.
Countries across the world are facing extreme weather patterns due to climate change. Conditions of severe heat wave, flash floods, landslides, droughts are becoming more frequent than ever. Fire burning northwest of Los Angeles in US state of California has forced the evacuation of over 1,000 people and burnt over 12,000 acres of land. Only 2% of the fire has been contained. While in Latin America, at least 6 people have died and 19 were injured in a landslide in Ecuador.
I beg all citizens to stay at home. Do not try to go to these places as you are facing a high risk.
China is witnessing torrential rains. 4 people died and 2 are missing as heavy rains triggered landslides in China's Fujian province on Monday. Severe flood warnings have been issued in China's southern region. In another development, residents in China's Beijing turned to sun protective gear on Monday after alerts for high temperatures were issued across the country. Severe heat has claimed the lives of 6 Jordanians during the ongoing Hajj pilgrimage. Temperatures are expected to hover around 47 degrees Celsius in Mecca.
Hajj is a difficult task, so you have to exert efforts and perform the rituals even in the conditions of heat and crowding. You use an umbrella, drink water and pour it onto your body to prevent dehydration.
Back home, the entire North India is grappling with severe heat wave. The Met Office has issued heat wave to severe heat wave warnings for the entire northern Indian region till 18th of June. While northeast Indian states along with West Bengal and Odisha are expected to receive heavy to very heavy rainfall in the next 4 to 5 days, according to the Met Office. Over 1,200 tourists remain stranded and await evacuation in the northeast Indian state of Sikkim as heavy rains and floods disrupted connectivity along the highway. While nearly 6,000 people have been affected in 93 villages across the northeastern Indian state of Assam as heavy rains continued to engulf the region. While flames erupted from the mountainous forest of India's Jammu and Kashmir as a prolonged dry spell followed by strong winds caused wildfires in the region, authorities are trying to contain the flames. The extreme weather conditions around the world point to the urgent need to think about climate change and take immediate action to mitigate its effect. Bureau Report, DD India.
Still to come here on DD India News Hour. We'll be discussing India's stand on the conflict resolution in Ukraine. And PM Modi shares the benefits of Bhadra Asana in the run-up to International Day of Yoga.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Here's a recap of our main stories. India's External Affairs Minister Jaishankar meets the US NSA Sullivan, says relationship to advance strongly under Modi 3.0 government. Sullivan also calls on Prime Minister Modi, US-India Strategic Partnership Forum to meet in Washington later in the day. India makes stand clear on Russia-Ukraine peace, says a resolution requires sincere engagement on the part of both sides and all stakeholders. Russian President Putin to visit North Korea, his first visit in 24 years, underscores Moscow's growing ties with the isolated nuclear DPRK. And Bangladesh cements final Super 8 spot in the ICC Men's T20 World Cup, beating Nepal by 21 runs. All teams in the Super 8 are confirmed. Matches to begin from June 19. And going back to our story on conflict resolution in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, we have with us S.K. Tayal, our former senior diplomat. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. Ambassador Tayal, is there a desire, do you see, from both sides, I mean Russia and Ukraine, for sincere engagement? Do you feel that the time has come, that time has come?
I'm afraid not really. Now, the issue is very complex. The two sides have well entrenched positions and they are not yet ready to backtrack or compromise on their stated principles for resolution. The conflict is now more than 2 years old and there is a kind of stalemate, I would say, as far as the ground situation is concerned, with Russia being in possession or in occupation of considerable parts of Ukraine, 4 provinces practically. Crimea is already with them since 2014. And the terms for peace and engagement which are being publicly stated by President Putin on Russia's side and President Zelensky from Ukraine side are diametrically apart. There are poles apart. There is no meeting ground at all. So the timing of this summit or this meeting in Switzerland is perhaps not very suitable as far as any movement towards a compromise or towards a solution of this problem is concerned.
Okay.
And in any case, Russia was not invited, so it was a rather one-sided meeting of some heads of states and other delegations from about 90 countries.
Ambassador Tayal, but despite that, I mean, how does the world take forward the outcomes of the Swiss Peace Summit? I mean, it looked like they were moving in some direction, urging for peace. Can that be prevailed upon? The two parties, the main parties and other countries to try and bring that about?
The stated declared agenda by the host, the President of Switzerland, was on three issues: nuclear safety, food security, and humanitarian issues. Now, on these three matters, there can be a global consensus, there can be an international consensus, and pressure should be put whichever party of the two is threatening any of these three issues. And on that, if there in the statement, joint statement, there are some guidelines, there are some suggestions, there are some directions, and there under the UN Security Council or the UN General Assembly, there can be more movement. Nuclear safety is extremely important, and some statements have come from Russia which have threatened use of nuclear deterrence in case NATO intervenes. So in my view, it is a deterrence. It is not a threat to use, but to just make sure that the NATO itself does not become a party in Ukraine-Russia conflict. As far as food security is concerned, it is very important that the wheat and fertilizers which are produced in Ukraine, they have a way out through the Black Sea so that they can be sold and they can be sent to rest of the world. There is already a route open, and some countries, Turkey, United Nations, etc., are very active in that, and it is important that the route for export of Ukrainian food grains, fertilizers and other things to rest of the world continues. And the third, of course, is the humanitarian issues. There should be exchange of prisoners, and both sides should make sure that whatever action they take related to war, the humanitarian, the human rights of people are protected, and their life and property is protected. This is a responsibility on both sides of the war. That is Ukraine as well as Russia.
Sure. Ambassador Tayal, also how best can India engage constructively with both parties and all stakeholders?
India has made very important statements about UN Charter, even about territorial integrity, as well as that security of all the countries should be assured. India has channels of communication open with both the sides. Our Prime Minister, Honorable Narendra Modi, can any day speak to President Putin, as well as he recently had a meeting with President Zelensky in Italy. Earlier also they had spoken on phone. So India is in a unique position where it can try to narrow the differences between the two sides, but when the time comes, at present both sides have dug in their feet. Ukraine is ready and willing to keep on fighting, and Russia is not yet ready to compromise or return or cede or give back some of the territory or all of the territory which it has seized from Ukraine. But once the timing is right, once the two sides show a keen desire to come to some kind of an understanding and compromise, then I believe India in general, our foreign minister, our prime minister will be in a very unique position to help in that process, to narrow the differences, to be interlocutors, to carry messages on the two sides to each other, so that this situation is resolved. Here another important factor would be the future election for United States. President Trump is rather unpredictable, and he has made earlier in his first term statements which were not very favorable to NATO. So after that, if he wins in the November election, then the US position regarding Ukraine-Russia war could change, and that will be a very different ball game. But the chances of a compromise, of an end to Ukraine-Russia conflict would, in my view, improve if President Trump returns to the White House.
Okay, we leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador S.R. Tayal. Thank you for being with us. Now, India's textile export industry has marked remarkable growth despite unfavorable global economic challenges. India's textile exports grew by 9.6% in May 2024 compared to the same month of the previous year. In addition to this, India's apparel exports also saw a growth of 9.9% during the same period. The Confederation of Indian Textile Industries report, it highlighted the cumulative exports of textiles and apparel in May 2024. It registered a growth of 9.8%. And with this, India's overall exports for May 2024 surged to $68 billion. The recently released export data revealed that sectors such as electronic goods, drugs and pharmaceuticals, textiles, handlooms, products, which performed well in the export segment of our country. Let's take a look now at other stories making the news. In an encounter between security forces and terrorists in Bandipora district, an armed terrorist identified as Zakir Hamid Mir was arrested by the officials. He belongs to Karachi village, to Kachri village of Handwara, and he was in touch with a Pakistani handler. Now, another terrorist was also killed during the encounter. In an encounter between Naxalites and security officials in Chaibasa of Jharkhand, 4 Naxalites have been killed, including a woman, while a few have been injured. 2 Naxalites have also been arrested. The officials have recovered arms and ammunition from the place. In an extensive search operation, the BSF troops conducted an extensive search operation in collaboration with Punjab Police in the border area of Taran district. And in fact, a China-made DJI Mavic 3 classic drone was also recovered by the officials from a school in the village. And now let's get you updates on the International Day of Yoga, which is to be celebrated on the 21st of June. And in 3 days from now, the world is going to mark the 10th International Day of Yoga, celebrating a timeless practice that celebrates oneness and harmony. India's Prime Minister Modi shared a video on his X handle, and it offers guidance of Bhadrasana and its benefits.
Bhadrasana. Bhadrasana is also known as the auspicious pose in English. This asana helps to make both your body and mind firm. To do Bhadrasana, sit down erect on the floor with your legs stretched out in front of you. Keep your hands beside the hips and palms resting on the floor. Be careful that the weight of your body is not fully on your hands. This pose is called Dandasana. From this posture of Dandasana, slowly release your breath while joining the soles of your feet together. Now, lock your hands with the toes of your feet and slowly bring the heels of your feet as close to your perineum region as possible. In doing so, if your thighs are not touching the ground, then you can support them by keeping a pillow underneath them. Bhadrasana is Viramasana, the state of sitting in one position for a long time. Close your eyes in this position and breathe in and out normally. Bhadrasana keeps the body firm and the mind steady. It strengthens the bones of the knees and hip joints and also reduces pain in the knees. It also helps to remove any kind of stress in the stomach. It also provides relief during the monthly menstrual cycles in women and other problems. It is also beneficial for pregnant women. People suffering from acute arthritis and sciatica should refrain from doing this asana. Keep sitting still in this position for some time. Open your eyes. While slowly taking your breath in, stretch your legs to the front. Stay relaxed in the Doordarshan pose for some time. Bhadrasana affects the innermost organs of your body and makes your entire body healthy.
Well, still to come here on DD India News Hour. France is to restrict children's access to social media. We have a report from Paris. And we get you the latest from the Mumbai International Film Festival. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Now, France is planning to try and restrict children's access to the social media. The country's president says that the young people are at risk from harm online. Emmanuel Macron asked a commission of experts to examine the risks that children face by spending too much time on screens. And they have recommended a new legislation. Ross Cullen puts it into context.
From social media to online gaming and watching videos, screens now dominate a large part of our lives. But it's the impact on children's development that is worrying the French government. In a major speech last month, the French president said that the legal age for using social media should be no younger than 15.
Et aujourd'hui, plusieurs heures par jour.
And today, for several hours a day, we open the door to the jungle. And that same person could be a victim of cyberbullying, or subject to pornographic material, or pedocriminality. That's what the online space is, because it's not regulated, and it is not moderated either.
In April, a survey by French public health authorities showed that 2-year-olds in France spend about an hour a day in front of a screen. For child psychiatrist Anne Siniquier, it's a problem that must be addressed.
These screens are a bit hypnotic for children. There is lots of light, movement, bright colors, lots of sound. I mean, just look at a child watching TV. You can call them 100 times, and they won't respond in any way because they are completely hypnotized.
In 2023, the government said it wanted to introduce prevention messages on computers, tablets and phones to advise consumers in a similar way to the warnings on tobacco products. And protecting young people from too much screen time has cross-party support. Earlier this year, the opposition Republican Party tabled a bill calling for a ban on screens in nurseries for children under 3. Some of the new laws could include no screens for the under 3s, smartphones only being allowed for those under the age of 13, and a recommendation not to use Instagram or TikTok if you're under the age of 18. Ross Cullen in Paris, reporting for DD India.
Muslims around the world celebrated Eid-ul-Adha, the festival of sacrifice, and prayers and festivities are required on the occasion. And in India, in fact, and several other Asian countries, the occasion is marked with devotion and tradition. Let's look at the celebrations.
With the rising sun, Muslim devotees across India gathered at mosques to offer prayers, marking the celebration of Eid-ul-Adha. Thousands of devout Muslims were seen reciting namaz on this auspicious occasion.
The message is to spread love and love and respect, and to everywhere, to everyone, every community, and be together and also celebrate with all the friends and family members and neighbors.
President of India Draupadi Murmu greeted fellow citizens on the occasion of Eid-ul-Adha. In her message, the president said, Heartiest greetings of Eid-ul-Adha to all countrymen, especially Muslim brothers and sisters living in India and abroad. This festival of sacrifice and renunciation gives us the message of sharing our happiness with everyone, especially with the needy people. On this occasion, let us all take a pledge to work together for the benefit of all countrymen, especially the people of the underprivileged sections. India's Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar also wished the citizens. Taking to X, he said, "Heartiest greetings to all on the occasion of Eid-ul-Zuha. Let us reflect on the values of unity, kindness and solidarity that form the cornerstone not only of this festival but of our society at large. On this blessed day, I wish you all a joyous celebration filled with compassion, shared joy and countless blessings." India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi shared his best wishes, highlighting the festival's role in promoting harmony and togetherness. In his message, PM Modi said, "Greetings on Eid-ul-Adha. May this special occasion further cement the bonds of harmony and togetherness in our society. May everyone be happy and healthy." Eid-ul-Adha, one of Islam's two main festivals, is also known as the Festival of Sacrifice. It signifies the culmination of the annual Hajj pilgrimage and commemorates the willingness of Prophet Ibrahim to sacrifice his son as an act of obedience to God.
This day reminds us of Prophet Ibrahim's sacrifice. The sacrifice we make does not have to be materialistic. It is about sacrificing the negativity in our lives and sending a message to humanity that we must live our lives as good human beings.
Beyond India, the festival was celebrated across several Asian countries including Indonesia, Malaysia, Bangladesh, Pakistan and Sri Lanka. On Monday, these nations observed the holy day with prayers, meals and acts of charity. As the world comes together to celebrate Eid-ul-Adha, the spirit of sacrifice, devotion and community is vividly displayed, bringing together Muslims from diverse cultures and regions in a unified expression of faith. With Bureau Inputs, Amish Mahajan's report for DD India.
A celebration of the power of documentaries, short films and animation on display at the 18th edition of the Mumbai International Film Festival. DD India correspondent Shama Mishra tells us what happened on the third day of the festival.
The 18th edition of Mumbai International Film Festival is witnessing a magnificent display of the finest documentaries India has to offer. These films are divided into various categories including Mission Life, Wildlife, Azadi Ki Amrit Kahaniyan, Berlinale, Oscar Package and many more. A session with veteran filmmaker T.S. Nagbharan explored the transformative potential of documentaries and how they bring issues to light, ignite action and shape a better world. The session talked about using documentary films to promote social transformation.
When I became a filmmaker, I realized that unless and otherwise, if you can speak with images and communicate to that whoever who wants to reach that, his memory will be very strong. The imaginary, especially photographic memory, is there in each and every person. So his memory will last for a longer period, and that's where our films make a sense. Documentaries, short films, that will make a sense and it will change the society.
A hand-picked selection of short films from Berlinale was also showcased. Ekta Mittal's Gumnaam Din or Missing Days was showcased as part of the Berlinale Shorts 2020. Her film was also part of the Berlinale Shorts package at the Mumbai Film Festival.
I feel Gumnaam Din, the poem, allows us to understand this kind of separation, grief, maybe loss of something that's changing always, and you don't know how much time has passed.
Another panel discussion, Unveiling Her Story, sheds spotlight on women's narratives brought to life through documentaries. The session celebrated filmmakers Shrishti Lakhera, Farha Khatun and Isabel Simeoni, who are championing women's achievements, struggles and experiences.
Women have broken the shackles of suppression and come out and have started talking about issues which were earlier not spoken about.
So it's very important to
to share experiences with other female directors and talk about gender issues, and I think it always helps.
Throughout the day, several other sessions and screenings, including The Magic of AI, was organized to provide an opportunity to budding filmmakers. Shama Mishra's report for DD India from Mumbai.
And Prithul Kumar, Joint Secretary Broadcasting in the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting in India and the Managing Director of the National Film Development Corporation, spoke exclusively to DD India. He said that there are 16 co-production packages and 5 work-in-progress projects at the first Doc Bazaar organized at MIF. And he also said that this time there are various categories in which the films have been divided into, and these include Mission Life, Wildlife, Azadi Ki Amrit Kahaniyan, and many more.
Joint Secretary of Information and Broadcasting, Prithul Kumar, is with us. Sir, congratulations on hosting this very beautiful, very grand Mumbai International Film Festival. We understand that this is the first time that you all are having Doc Bazaar, and tell us about that and what other new initiatives you all are having this time around. Please tell us on that.
First of all, this is a 18th edition of the Mumbai International Film Festival, which is an event of the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, which is done through the National Film Development Corporation. Earlier, this used to be done through the Film Division, but now because the Film Division is also integrated into the National Film Development Corporation. So this is for the first time, National Film Development Corporation is actually holding this festival. And as you already mentioned that this festival will be having its first documentary film bazaar. It was conceptualized by the government that the documentary filmmakers are the non-commercial format of cinema, which require a definitive support from all around, all the ways possible for making the documentary films. And so is with animation and short films. So this is how the first time documentary film bazaar was conceptualized. And I would like to tell you that we received more than 200 applications, from which we have been able to curate about 16 co-production projects, 5 work in progress, and more than 100 in viewing room. So a lot of projects are here and a lot of interest are there. Are the people who have come here to pitch, they have been constantly busy. And yesterday they had a session in the master classes also, pitching it to the business. It was very well attended. And apart from that, in this bazaar, we are also having about 27 pavilions, which is for the countries. They are displaying their film policies. There are states who are displaying their film policies. And apart from that, we also have a segment of more than 15 stalls wherein the VFX, animation, and the technical stalls are there, which are sort of telling the filmmakers who are attending here, the budding filmmakers and the filmmakers who sort of associate and become a delegate of MIF, of the latest technologies which are taking place here. So it's a great mix. People can come, learn, see, experience. So I really hope that this first edition is great.
And some cricket news now. Well, Bangladesh beat Nepal by 21 runs on Sunday in Kingston, and they've sealed the final spot in the Super 8 phase of the T20 World Cup. Nepal restricted Bangladesh to 106 after winning the toss and fielding first, but they were bowled out for 85 with 4 balls to spare. And with this, all the 8 teams in the Super 8 phase of the tournament have been decided. The win put Bangladesh in Group 1 of the Super 8s, and this Group 1 includes India, Australia and Afghanistan. And they take on India, in fact, on June 22. Well, that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour. Let's know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those of you on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code and download it. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Mark Lynn. From all of us here in Delhi, thank you very much for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.